welcome to Enzymatic, the show for everyone who's amazed by enzymes.
We've got the lowdown on those timeless fashion items, stonewashed jeans. Beauty tips on how to make your skin feel soft and fresh. Good news in up the environment. And how we help John to beat his wash day blues.
Me and my dad had an argument. He said enzymes have always been around. And I said, don't be silly, they've only just been invented because they're to do with the biotechnology industry. And that's new, isn't it?
Well, in one sense, your dad's right. Enzymes have always been around. In fact, we just couldn't live without them. Ever thought about how the food you eat becomes the energy you use? It happens because of enzymes, and it starts right here in the mouth. The action of chewing food produces saliva, which contains an enzyme called amylase. Amylase is a biological catalyst in a reaction which converts starch into sugar. And what is sugar but energy? Starch into sugar is the first step in a whole series of chemical reactions in the body which convert food into the energy we need. None of them would happen without enzymes.
Okay, but what about the biotechnology industry? When did it start?
Well, even that's been around for a while. Here's an example. Cheese making is biotechnology, and enzymes are vital to the process. Cheese making is basically the same process as when it began 3,000 years ago. Cheese is made from milk. At this cheese factory, they take a few thousand litres of milk, put it into a big vat and stir it. But you could try this at home. We asked David to see how long it would take him to make cheese. Day 1, in goes the milk. Stir it up. Day 2, no change. Day 3, starting to clog up. Day 4, there's a semi-solid part that's cheese-like and some liquid. But 4 days is no good for business. The Wensleydale cheesemakers need to do it more quickly, so they add this to speed up the process. It's an enzyme called rennet. The enzyme helps the milk to coagulate, that's separate into solids and liquids, by speeding up the chemical reactions. The enzymes will remain active until all the milk is used up. Once it is separated, the liquid whey is drained off. The solid curd is sliced up, and it's packed into presses ready for storing. That procedure has taken 4 hours, not 4 days. It's much faster thanks to the enzyme. The cheese is left for 4 months to mature before it's ready to be eaten.
Okay, time for some explanations. Let's explore the secret life of enzymes.
Well, for a start, enzymes aren't alive. They're proteins, and proteins are chemicals. In fact, they're complicated 3D structures, long chains of proteins tightly coiled and folded. This scientist is exploring the structure of an enzyme using virtual reality. He can actually see inside the molecule. Understanding the structure is essential to understanding how and why enzymes work, but don't worry, you don't have to know the details. So how does an enzyme speed up a reaction? Let's take the example we've talked about earlier, starch into sugar. It can be demonstrated in the laboratory. There's water in the beaker, and this is starch. Well, in fact, it's flour, but flour is mainly starch. We want to turn it into sugar, but if we just leave them to it, the water and the starch don't react. So remember what happened in the human body? That's right, the enzyme amylase helped convert the starch into sugar. Starch is insoluble and remains suspended in the water. It's not very easy to see, but if we add iodine, the starch will turn a blue color. Look what happens when Haley adds amylase. A reaction occurs. The blue color is disappearing. That means the starch is disappearing too. A simple test would show that it's been changed into the sugar maltose. Like all sugars, it's soluble in water. So what's happened? First, let's look at that amylase molecule in more detail. Here's a computer view of it. Pretty complicated, so here's a simple representation showing the surface of the molecule. This is the working bit. It's called the active site. And here's our starch molecule, called the substrate in the reaction. They fit together like a lock and key, and the starch molecule breaks. The starch is broken into smaller units, which means it's a different chemical, the sugar maltose. The reaction actually happens very quickly. Some enzymes carry out reactions like this at the rate of 100,000 times a second. Now that's what you call speeding things up.
Oh, look, John. Beautiful spaghetti, eh? Mamma mia!
John wants to be a cook, and he's got a part-time job at his local Italian restaurant. He's assistant head stirrer of sauces. Only this is what happened one day when he was stirring the bolognese sauce. He was covered in splashes. What should he do to get them out? Stop and think, John. Think what's in the sauce.
Orlando's bolognese recipe. Mint meat,
That's protein and fat.
carrots, onions, garlic, tomatoes,
Those are carbohydrates.
herbs, and spices.
So the sauce is a mixture of proteins, fats and carbohydrates. Most foods are, and they all need to be broken down. How are they broken down in the body? Using enzymes, of course. So John needs a washing powder that contains enzymes. Bring on the biological. In goes a measure of biological washing powder. John whacks up the temperature to maximum and waits. Do you think it will work? When the clothes come out, they're still covered in stains. What's gone wrong? Remember, in the body, this is how amylase breaks down starch. But this is what goes on in the very hot water of the washing machine. Can you see what's happening? The enzyme molecule is distorted by the heat, which causes the shape of the active site to change. The enzyme and substrate can't fit together, so the starch stays in its insoluble form and doesn't dissolve. Not surprising, is it? Enzymes are very fussy about certain things, and one of them is temperature. This is what John should have done. Note, the temperature this time is a moderate 40 degrees. And this would have been the result. One clean apron. And one happy boss.
Enzymes can even help us clean up the environment. Take a look at this.
It may look pretty, but this lake is in a bad way. It's suffering from years of neglect. Badly polluted water from nearby streams has led to a deterioration in the water quality. It's caused plants and animals in the lake to die, and a thick sludge of decaying and dead matter has formed on the bottom. No light can get in, and all the oxygen has been used up. The water is murky and lifeless. The dead material at the bottom of the pond is the real problem. It's organic waste made up of large, complex molecules. If they can be broken down, the material can be recycled by microorganisms and the water will clear. And who are the experts at breaking things down? Enzymes. At another lake nearby, the treatment is going on. These granules contain enzymes and bacteria. The enzymes react with the organic waste and release material that the bacteria can feed on. The cleanup has started. Oxygen levels improve, and before long the water can be transformed into this. This represents what goes on beneath the surface. Enzyme and substrate come together during the reaction. But what do you notice when the work's been done? The product is released, but the enzyme is still there. It's not changed. It means that the enzyme can carry out the same task again. In fact, it can perform its work many times over, so the cleanup of the lake should continue for a long time.
Denim jeans are never far out of fashion. There are lots to choose from, but these all look a bit new. Most of us want the worn look, but how do you get it?
Washing them over and over again is one way to do it. But denim cloth is tough. The indigo dye is trapped in a tight weave of the fibres. To make the cloth give up the dye, you'd have to wash it lots and lots of times, and you'll have to wait months to achieve the look you want. There is another way. This is how stone-washed jeans are produced. The stones are pumice stone. It's a volcanic rock imported from Turkey. They help to wear down the fibres in the denim by literally battering them, making them weaker and forcing them to give up their dye. But it can damage the clothes too. The stones are quite abrasive. So enzymes can be used to achieve the same results. When jeans are first manufactured, the denim is coated with a starch substance called size to protect the yarn. It makes the jeans very stiff, so first the size has to be removed. It's done with an enzyme, and guess which enzyme is used? It's our old friend amylase again. Next, the denim has to be persuaded to give up its dye like in the stonewashing, but for this a different enzyme is needed. It acts on the cellulose fibres in the cotton, cutting some of them into shorter lengths so that the dye runs out more readily. Why are two enzymes needed? Here's the first one. It's our amylase. Remember the lock and key model? In the second stage of the process, it's the cellulose molecules in the fibre that need to be broken. But they're a different shape altogether, and they don't fit into the amylase active site. The second enzyme, which is cellulase, does have an active site which can join with the cellulose. This time, the bonds can be broken. This is an important point. All enzymes are specific. They will only take part in a reaction with a specific substrate. Amylase with starch, cellulase with cellulose, and so on. Using enzymes in jeans production has several advantages. It achieves the worn look without damaging the clothes, and there's less bulky waste to dispose of. Most of this blue gunge is from the stonewash process in a landfill site. However, the enzymes are very expensive to produce, so they still haven't taken over completely from stones in the washing machines. These are jeans, and these are jeans washed with enzymes. Can you see a difference?
I'm writing to you on email because I'm too embarrassed to even go out and post a letter. After I wash my face in the morning, my skin feels really tight. I put on my normal moisturising cream, which helps at first, but after an hour or two, my skin feels dry again, and there are flaky patches. What can I do?
Don't worry, Philippa. What you need is a different kind of moisturiser, one with a slow release system that works on your dry skin throughout the day. And how's that done? Think enzymes. But here's the clever bit. The enzymes are not in the cream. They're on your skin. You've got enzymes on the outside as well as the inside of your body. The blue spheres represent tiny balls of the moisturiser contained in a thin lipid membrane. The orange strip is the surface layer of skin with the enzymes. The enzymes actually digest the lipid membrane. The moisturiser is then released and absorbed. But the process will then go on for several hours, so it should ensure your skin doesn't go dry.
Good morning, Harmon and Reimer. Yes, I'll put you through. Just a moment, please. Morning, Zoe. How are you this morning?
I'm fine, thank you. I'll just go through then, should I?
Yes, thank you.
I applied to do a day's work experience with a biotechnology firm because I'd heard about all the things that enzymes can do. It sounds very interesting, but there wasn't much to see. Lots of big metal tanks and people walking about in white coats, the control room full of computer screens. I couldn't understand what was going on.
Well, it's all going on out of sight, really. Those big tanks are called fermentation tanks, and they're producing vast quantities of enzymes. But let's go back to basics. All living things produce enzymes. They couldn't function without them. The biotechnology industry is based on one simple idea: persuade microorganisms to produce enzymes, then collect those enzymes separately for our own use. This whole factory works because of this: Aspergillus niger. It's a tiny mold similar to the slimy mold you'd find on a damp wall. It's going to produce our enzymes. In manufacturing, the process starts with a small quantity of Aspergillus spores. They're put into a nutrient medium containing sources of food for the mold to feed on. They're kept in just the right conditions: warmth to stimulate growth and multiplication, and oxygen is blown through the vessel. During fermentation, the Aspergillus feeds on the nutrients and releases an enzyme as a byproduct. In this case, it's glucose oxidase. But that's not a big enough scale to produce the amount of enzymes needed by industry. Glucose oxidase is used to remove excess sugar during food processing, so there's a lot of demand for it. The microbes are transferred into much bigger fermentation tanks. Again, they're provided with the right conditions to grow and multiply very quickly, and then they are triggered to begin producing enzymes. We've already seen that enzymes are sensitive chemicals, so production of them has to be carried out under exactly the right conditions. This whole plant is controlled by computers, which constantly monitor temperature and pH levels in the tanks. Over a period of several days, the fermentation results in a broth consisting of the microorganisms, nutrients and enzymes all mixed together. The broth filtered unwanted material.
The enzymes.
So now you know.